Today on Adversity to Strength, I have Dr. Nadine Macaluso, known to her patients as Dr. Nay, the real-life inspiration by Naomi Belfort's character in The Wolf of Wall Street. She survived a turbulent 8-year marriage to Jordan Belfort, marked by abuse, greed and trauma. Following her experiences, Dr. Macaluso relocated to California. Her journey of trauma and healing inspired her to return to school at age 39. When she earned her master's in counseling and a PhD in somatic psychotherapy, she further specialized with a 2-year postdoctoral training in neuroaffective relationship model, or NARM. As a therapist, Dr. Macaluso combines her education and personal experiences to help others heal from trauma. Her practice focuses on assisting patients in connecting with their authentic selves, fostering confidence, resilience, and agency. She firmly believes in the potential of post-traumatic growth, instilling hope in her patients and guiding them to reach their potential in life and love. Nadine, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
My pleasure. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Take us back to the beginning of your journey. Where did it all start for you? Because I know it's been an eventful one for you.
Yeah, so it all really started in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, right? So in the movie The Wolf of Wall Street, that's why my ex called me the Duchess of Bay Ridge, because I was raised in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn in the 70s. It was a magical time in Brooklyn in the 70s, no cell phones, no internet. Kids just played out on the street. And I was raised by an English mother who was very into psychology. So my whole life really has been rooted since the beginning of my life in psychology. She was reading Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud in the 70s, and she was a real feminist. And she left my dad when I was 6. But we had just a really charmed, really easy, trauma-free, very beautiful life. I have me, her, and my brother. And, I still have my best friend that grew up on the street with me from when I was 9, So it was a very charmed beginning to life. I was raised by a single mother, though, and so we didn't have a lot of money. I was living adjacent to New York City. I knew I needed money, and so I became a model. But my mother was very against it. She was very pro-education, but I was like, you know what, Mom? I need to buy a car. I need to be able to pay money to go into the discos, right? So I became a model, and I was modeling in New York City, living with my best friend from Bay Ridge in Brooklyn Heights. And as the movie The Wolf of Wall Street depicts, I went to a party in the Hamptons where I met my ex-husband, and that really changed the trajectory of my life forever. So you never know when you're walking into a party, it could happen.
Sliding doors moment. What was it like when you first met Jordan then? Just like a regular guy, or was there like an entourage around him?
I went to this party. It was at this beautiful house in West Hampton Beach on the ocean with my boyfriend at the time. And when, the movie shows me going into this party, this big crazy party in the Hamptons, which it was like that. It wasn't quite as crazy. But when I got there, I was like, what's up with these people? They're acting so strange. I didn't know they were all on Quaaludes, right?
Yeah.
I didn't know what a Quaalude was back then. And as the movie depicts, one of his friends did expose themselves to me. And as a young girl, you think you'd be outraged when that happens, but actually I felt ashamed. The victims usually feel shame. And I just said to my boyfriend, we have to leave. There's something wrong with these people. That had never happened to me in my life. I mean, that's just not an appropriate thing to do, right? So I left the party and I didn't even think anything about Jordan ever again. I never thought about him again. But then I guess he had set his sights on me.
Yeah.
And then he had a big white Testarossa with this crazy muffler that you could hear from blocks away. And I would hear the muffler all throughout the Hamptons, everywhere I went. But I didn't know then that he was kind of tracking me, right? But then he actually made a mutual friend of ours $1,000 in the stock market to get me to meet them for dinner.
Yeah, that's the different way to go about that.
It's a very determined way. And she called me up and I wasn't even good friends with her. I was like, why do you want to go to dinner? And then she just kept pestering me. So I went. And then she just nonchalantly says, that guy Jordan Belfort's going to go. And I go, why is he going? Isn't he married? At 22 years old, you don't think a married man should be.
No.
She goes, what do you care? I said, I don't care. I said, I just think it's strange. So, but then he came out from his Testarossa, sauntered over in his cowboy boots, and we actually had a very great conversation. I'm from Brooklyn. He's from Queens. He's only 5 years older than me. He's probably one of the most charming, magnanimous people you'll ever meet. And so we just hit it off. I did not know this was a setup. And then till he's driving me home, I'm like, this guy likes me.
And what were you thinking after that then? Because you obviously knew he was married, but he's a nice.
Yeah, I really wasn't thinking much. The next day, again, as the movie shows, he sent me, 1,200 square feet of flowers to fit into my 800 square foot apartment, right? So that was love bombing at its finest.
Yeah.
We didn't know this term back then. You have to remember,
No.
right? This was 25 years ago. We didn't know
Yeah.
about bonding
Yeah.
and love bombing. So I thought that was outrageous. Of course, I was flattered. But again, he was married. I was dating. He called me a few times. We spoke, but we never went out because that was actually when I did my Miller Lite commercial. And so I was going to Chicago to model. So I didn't see him for months. But then I came back to New York City and we were working out at a gym called the Vertical Club. And we bumped into each other. And he asked me out and he said, I'm separated, right? I should have been a lot more curious about that. But he had his own apartment and we went out for dinner. And then that was it.
That was it.
That was it. Glued to each other's side ever since then. Well, not now, but since back then.
Yeah. What were you thinking? Did you think, yeah, you know what? Did you get swept up in his charm or?
Yes.
Yeah.
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 He was so charming, so magnanimous. He was self-made, which was very impressive, right? And very bright. And, in the beginning, just very loving.
Yeah. How long would you say that lasted? Because you see in the movie, obviously it's in a movie there, but then there's like a lot of drugs, the money, then there's like
Yeah.
the FBI,
Yeah,
and
so
you could see him starting to get stressed.
yeah, so the money was always there, right? The crazy amounts of money was always there. And he was in the beginning absolutely wonderful. Like I say that in a trauma bond, there's Romeo and Dirty John. There's two guys in the relationship. In the beginning, you get to meet Romeo. So he was wonderful. I would say, though, a few months in. So the drugs in the beginning were not as extreme. That really escalated, like most addictions do, right?
Yeah.
It's a progressive disease. So that escalated, but he started to show signs of domination and intimidation.
Yeah.
Right?
When were the first signs there?
That was pretty early on because I was 23. I didn't want to get married and I didn't want children right away. My parents had gotten divorced when I was 6. And I had it in my mind, I didn't want to have children until I was 30. I wanted to wait. But he started to pressure me and coerce me. I didn't know the word coercion back then
Yeah,
either,
of course.
right? But he was like, if you don't marry me, I'm not going to date you. If you don't have children with me, I'm not going to marry you. So all of these threats were coming. And I was just like, but wait, what about me? Like, what about my needs? I don't want to do this. And he was just like, nope. So what I would say, because I didn't know the word coercion, I knew it was wrong because I would fight back with him, but I was no match for him. And I would just say, oh, he just loves me so much.
Yeah. Did you feel guilty for almost standing up for yourself?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would feel guilty. And I would say to myself, like, what's wrong with you, Nadine? Like, just do it. What do you care? But I really didn't want to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that all the time with clients there as well. And they end up find their lives going in a completely different direction than they actually, because they feel bad for saying no to this, then no to that, and then end up just saying
Exactly.
yes to everything. And did you find
Exactly.
that's what started to happen to yourself?
Yeah, because also well, first of all, I'm a woman, so I think women have been conditioned to be people pleasers, okay? But also it's my innate nature, hence why I'm a therapist, right? I'm
Yeah.
highly empathetic and I'm very agreeable. If you look at the 5-factor model of personality, I score very high in agreeableness. So I'm loyal, I'm tolerant, I'm pro-social, I'm very empathetic. And so all of that played into me being able to be manipulated.
And with that, how was the lifestyle going for you at the time?
The lifestyle was fun.
Was fun.
It was fun. Yeah. I mean, because listen, it, we would go to like the fanciest dinners and have, a $2,000 bottle of wine and you could go shopping and get whatever you want. So that was the fun part, right? That's the sweep you off your feet part. But that comes with the strings.
Yeah, of course. Now, what I was going to say is, did you Did you find yourself there weighing things up? Well, there's the downside, but then I've got this good side.
I think for me was that in the beginning, I was so in a trance and so wrapped up in love that I would just keep ignoring the red flags or
Yeah.
rationalizing or dismissing the red flags because the feeling of love or limerence or infatuation, right, was so extreme. And that's what it is with a trauma bond, right? The highs are so high and the
Yeah.
lows are so low. So I think it was just so, I was just so enraptured by him.
How many years into the relationship do you think that was?
Say, again, in the beginning, when the domination and threats started and the coercion, the coercive control started, again, I didn't know what that was. I would say slowly over time, it escalates, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I would say about, let me think about this, 3, 4 years in, and I stayed with him for about 7 to 8, I was like, "We have a problem. This is a
Yeah.
problem," between the drugs and the raging and the abuse. In the movie, they don't really show him being emotionally abusive to me. Did you notice that?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it a couple of times. I think last time I saw it was probably a couple of years ago, and it's a good film. It's a fun
And it's a
film.
great film.
It's a
No, it's a
great film.
great film.
But obviously, there's only so much they can include in it, and they want to sort of have like a narrative, that kind of thing there. But I think I do remember like a part was, I think it was the threatening to leave part, I think is the bit that I can remember in the movie when it comes to what you're saying there as well.
Right, right. But that's the whole interesting part is that,
Mm.
he was abusive the whole time. And that scene in the movie, which actually I'm going to do a video about it for social media. In the movie, and I hate that they do this actually. In the movie, I say to him, "I'm going to take the children."
Yeah,
I never once said that to him.
right.
Right. And so then he gets violent with me. So it's almost like they're justifying.
Yeah,
You see that? But A,
yeah.
I never said that. And B, he got violent with me because I told him he needed to get sober.
So, what was the point that you said? Was this the first time you had said that?
No, no, I had said it to him ad nauseum, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. But I think first of all, he started to like cook crack in my country kitchen. And one day I came down to my kitchen where he was like Scarface,
Yeah.
with Coke on his desk. And I was like, oh my God, this guy is just gonna kill himself. And so I said to him, I'm not like all your psychophants that are gonna sit here and just like watch you kill yourself. I said, you have to go to rehab or I'm leaving you. And that's when he went crazy, took all my clothing and jewelry and threw them in the fireplace and lit them on fire and said, sure, I don't even want to curse with all the things that he said to me because it's, he'll get bleeped out where I post this. And that's when he went crazy. And then that's when he told me he was going to take my daughter and he chartered a private plane and then that's when he kicked me down the stairs. So it was because now the good news is, well, he did get arrested for that. But the good news is he did go to rehab and did get sober. So I do believe it saved his life. He
Yeah, I
wouldn't have
mean,
lived.
yeah. There's no, but all of the people around him, like you see in the movie, they're all doing drugs as well. Was that the case?
Yeah, they're all doing drugs. They're all breaking the law. They're just like a wild group of like Robin Hood bandits, that are just doing crazy, outrageous things. And then when you surround yourself with all crazy people, that's a way to rationalize that what you're doing isn't so bad.
Yeah, yeah. And I always say to clients, you're a product of your environment.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. So all these guys are all crazy. And they really didn't care if he lived or died.
Well, they just like most of them like just hangers on.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And a lot of them made money with him and maybe they did care for him as a person, but I think all of their relationships were transactional and just using each other.
Yeah. And with yourself, how are you getting through the day and the week? Because you're there like a mum, and then
Yeah.
there's like a Scarface going on in your kitchen with drugs and stuff, and you're like, I've
Yeah.
got kids. What are you thinking at that time?
I was thinking so many things. I mean, first of all, I was scared because it's very scary to have that level of drugs around you. Second of all, I was furious. This was not the life that I wanted for myself. But yet, when you're living with a drug addict, you can't control them. You can't fix them. Back then, I didn't understand any of that. I'd never dealt with drugs like this in my life. So I didn't understand, and how you can't fix anybody. And I really believed as a young girl, like my love can fix him.
Always. Yeah.
Right, and I didn't, and so I was confused, I was scared, I was angry, I felt helpless, I felt hopeless, I felt everything, but, I had children to raise, I had a house to run, so I was still able to do that. I'm a great mom, I still am, my kids are my best friends, I would run the home, and I had things that I was doing on the side always for myself, like, I went to cooking school, I went to interior design school, like, as you can tell, like, I like to learn, right?
Yeah.
So I was learning how to horseback ride. I had my friends. So I was able to keep some sense of self, which allowed me, I think, to survive. And I was in therapy. I put myself into therapy right when I met him.
How come you decided to do that's an interesting one because you can
Because,
off.
I met him and I was just like, this guy's crazy. This life is crazy.
Right.
I just knew I could never handle it on my own. So I think that therapy actually was a lot, which was what allowed me to survive it.
So with the life in itself, I mean, you've gone from like a normal upbringing in New York, and then it's like, Beverly Hills housewife sort of thing there as well.
Yes, yes.
How is it living that life? Because the likes of me sitting there watching TV and just like, what do they do all day apart from go for dinner? How is that life? Do you get used to it? Is it something that other make you feel?
You get used to it. And, like I said, it had a lot of fun times and it was
Yeah.
really a lot of fun to be with my friends and do it. But as fun as it was, it was very tragic. It
Yeah.
was just a very extreme life. Yeah, because remember the yacht sank,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Of course.
you
Yeah.
know, we once get off a runway on a private plane into a snowbank. So there was so much drama and chaos. So when you fall in love with a person with a cluster B personality disorder,
Yeah.
the cluster B personality disorders, what do they say? They're dramatic and erratic. So your life becomes dramatic and erratic.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course. It
So
will do. Yeah.
yeah, so as much fun as the glamour and the money is, over time that loses its allure and luster.
Because all you wanted, I'm guessing, was just a normal life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wanted to like love my kids, bring them to school, have some nice dinners. I love to cook. I love to have dinner parties for my friends. I didn't want all the rest of it that went along with it. But remember, he's powerful. He has all the money and he's like King Midas. So
Yeah.
everybody's listening to him and really is going to listen to me?
What about your therapist? Because you're in therapy. Obviously, you're going to tell your therapist a lot what's
Yeah,
going
I
on.
told her all this. And, she was a very good therapist, and I do think she allowed me to manage it. But I know, even working with the women I work with, you can't tell a woman who's in a trauma want to leave, right? I wouldn't have come back to therapy,
Yeah.
right? So she just really held space for me to every week to go there without judgment, to talk about what I was feeling. And it was a very, very, it was the only safe place for me really at that point. But she didn't really tell me, he's a narcissist, you should leave. Now I use a lot more psychoeducation with my patients.
Same as me. That's how I work.
Yeah. So, but it's a different world, right?
Yeah.
They were a little bit more Freudian and
Yeah.
psychoanalytic, and the therapist is a blank slate. We're not like that today as
No.
therapists. So, but she was a good therapist, but I think she also knew, you can't tell somebody to leave because then they won't go back to therapy.
Yeah.
To keep the line of communication open. And then when a woman decides to leave, really is her decision alone.
So when was the point you decided to leave? What was there a moment or has been a build up? Was it coming out of therapy? When did you decide that that's it?
Yeah, what happened for me was, so after that horrible incident where he did get violent with me, he did go to rehab for a month. He came back and we tried to have a normal life, right? And we did because he was sober. But, I just had fallen out of love.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was there when he came back from rehab because he got sober for me and the kids, supposedly. But I mean, people have to get sober for themselves. But in my heart, I was done. But what happened was then a year later, he got arrested. And that's when I left because I knew I had a window. I knew he couldn't hurt me. He couldn't try to take my kids from me, right? Because a lot of powerful men, when you go to leave them, they will do those things. She's a drug addict or she's a bad mother. And, with power and money, you can buy everybody. I saw him, get away with tons of things. So
Yeah.
I really had to wait for him to get arrested. Now he's worried about the FBI and then I could live.
When you say you fell out of love, can you remember going through? Because I get a lot of this with clients when I'm working on relationships. How you felt the everyday life, because especially when you've got, I think you've had a big argument or whatever, and the partner knows they need to like get their act together, and then they're doing their absolute best, rolling out the red carpet, everything they can, but the feeling's not there. How
Yeah.
did you find that for yourself when he was, I'm guessing, making more of an effort?
You know, what happened for me was that we never had any real resolution because he never really had remorse.
No remorse.
So when I, one time after he had gotten sober, we went for sushi and I spoke to him and I said to him, you know, I have to tell you that drugs, the rage, it was incredibly hard for me. And he was like, it wasn't that bad. And at that moment, my heart closed.
Really?
Yeah, because if there's no accountability and there's no remorse and there's no, you know, I'm really sorry. Wow, I can't even imagine what that would have been like for you. Then we can have repair and then
Yeah.
we can build a relationship. But to deny what he had done, so he had abused me and was a severe drug addict, then there's no remorse. I'm just like,
Is Would
no,
that be the difference from that time where he's got no remorse for all of the major things that he's done, which you have to
right.
have remorse for? Whereas in the past, you might have gone, I'm questioning myself here. Maybe it's me or anything like that. Or
Yeah.
it's just too clear cut.
You know, the thing about my ex-husband, which is very different than a lot of people that are in trauma bonds, he was so over an extreme that I knew it wasn't me.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I think in the beginning, I would often be like, well, if I did this right, if I did that right,
Yeah.
maybe if I do this, you know, in the beginning, it was like that. But as the relationship developed, and I have a lot of empathy for women or men who are in these relationships where the partners aren't quite as extreme, they're more covert. I understand that it can be trickier. But for me, it was very clear that he was to blame for all this
Yeah.
madness.
So were you waiting for a window to leave? Do you think after he's come out of rehab and the love had gone, were you thinking, I'm going to leave. I'm going to grab the kids. I need to wait for the right time.
You know, I think it was a slow coming to terms with that. I don't know if I fully ever knew that when I was going to leave or how I was going to leave, but once that happened, I just knew that that was a moment that I had to take.
Yeah. Did
'Cause
you know?
'cause he had no power anymore.
So I'm trying to remember of the movie now because I think from what I remember, he knew that the FBI was starting to look around him. Were you aware of that?
Yes, yes.
And what were you what was he saying to you about that? Was he
He was
worried?
just like, "Don't worry about it. It's nothing." You know, he really downplayed it. He wasn't very, what's the word I'm looking for? Very transparent with me about it, which I wish
Yeah.
he would, because the night he got arrested, the FBI, after they took him away, which they had no right to do this, they sequestered me and interrogated me for 4 to 5 hours alone without a lawyer.
Yeah.
Well, he should have said to me, "If this happens, call this
Yeah.
person." Right? But he wasn't fully transparent with me, so I didn't know who to call. I was like 30 years old. I'm not gonna tell the FBI no. You know, and I knew I didn't do anything. So I was terrified to talk to them, but still, those were the types of things where I couldn't forgive those things because that's a small thing to say, "Hey, listen, if this goes down, you know, this is who you call." But he never did that.
Do you think I mean, again, going like from the movie, and obviously I've read books and seen
Yeah.
interviews. Do you think he was almost like in his own world, chaotic
Yeah.
world?
Yeah, yeah, and, you know, maybe he didn't wanna worry me or thought that if he did tell me, I might really leave, but to me, you know, it was he should have protected me more in that way.
Yeah. So he's got arrested. Was there a particular moment you thought, right now, this is right in 2 weeks' time or in a week, I'm getting the kids
Yeah.
on?
Once he got arrested, I was done. I was
Yeah.
like, "That's it, I'm done." And my mother, who's, God bless her soul, she's so smart, and she said to me, "You know, let's go see an attorney because the whole thing with the FBI, maybe you need representation." And as soon as I go into the attorney's office, they look at me and say, "Oh, you wanna get divorced." She took me to a divorce attorney behind my back.
She must
So
have known what you were suffering for.
she knew, and then I was like, "Oh, good one, mom." And so, yeah, and then I was like, "You know what? I really do wanna get divorced." And I didn't end up hiring that attorney, I ended up hiring a different one, but that was really the beginning of me doing this for myself.
When did um Jordan find out that you'd left him, and what happened then?
He knew because, the whole time he was home with his ankle bracelet on, and I would just say to him, we had 2 homes, and I just said, "We have to get divorced." Like, I can't do this anymore. You know, this is crazy. This is nothing I signed up for. You know, now you're arrested and like on 11 counts of money laundering. Like, this is nuts. So he moved to hit my house in our house in Southampton, and that was really it. And I never had him back.
Yeah. What did he say when he knew that you were leaving?
He was upset.
Yeah.
He didn't want to get divorced. But you
Mm.
know what? At that point, I just didn't care.
Yeah. You got to that literally.
I got to that point where I really didn't like him.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a lot you've been through. And how many years had you been together at that
8
time?
years.
8 years. That's a long,
And listen, and I was not a perfect person, right? We're all imperfect.
of
I'm not
course.
saying I was perfect, but I was a good wife.
Yeah.
I never cheated on him. I was a good mother. I was loyal. I ran a good home. Like he, you know, and I just didn't deserve that sort of treatment. And I just was like, you know what? This is nuts. Like love shouldn't mean that you have to self-abandon and sacrifice yourself
No.
repeatedly.
When was the first time you felt free after that?
Oh God. Right. As soon as he left the house,
Yeah.
that freedom, I always joke that I always say, I don't know if you know the movie Risky Business.
Yeah. It's a great film.
When Tom Cruise is dancing on the couch in his underwear when his parents leave the house.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
I post about it on Instagram. That's how I felt.
Hey. So where did you go after that then?
Dated my home for a while. And about a year and a half later, I met my second husband, who I'm still with, and we dated. And then he lived in California, and I was able to move to California with my children. And
Right.
so we moved to California and restarted our lives.
Right. And when you got to come in, because obviously, especially in America, that's a long distance there. So that's a long way away. You're not going to run into him at the grocery store. So
No.
when you got to California, did you think, right, well, what do I do now?
You know, I was in the garment business because I had started a garment company when I was with him. I was making maternity clothing. So I was working, which is great. And I always say that to women, it's important to have your own finances, you know? So I was working, living in California. Jordan didn't get sentenced for 6 to 7 years, I think. So then he came out to California to be with his kids.
Right.
And so I was working, raising my kids and living a great life. And we got to start our lives all over again. My children were like 5 and 3 or 4 and 6 when I moved.
Pretty small there. So they're only really familiar with California there as well.
Yeah.
And how was the relationship with Jordan long after you got divorced? How did that work?
Yeah, you know, like initially it was a little rough, but once he moved to California, it was fine. John, my husband and I were very kind with him. We had him over for every holiday. We were friendly, very, very friendly with him. And so, you know, we were at all the soccer games together. It was fine. It was good. It was actually very good.
And how would you say, obviously, when it kind of like settled, how was he towards you then? Because obviously you've had years of being in a narcissistic
Good.
relationship.
He was fine. You know what?
Yeah.
He was fine. Think he was, you know, listen, I could have kept my kids from him.
Yeah.
I mean, but I'm just not that type of person.
Yeah.
I'm not that type of person. And as long as he's a good dad and he's sober and he's kind to them, great. And he was.
Because he sound like now you sort of see him and he's like kind of seems to have reformed, but that's very difficult for a narcissist. I've never had a narcissist come to me that's a narcissist and try and get help or being a narcissist. So where do you think he is now with himself from where he was? What would you say?
I think he's done a lot of work on himself. Listen, he's still who he is, right? Like
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
a specific character.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much he's changed. I don't hang out with him that much anymore because my kids are so much older. Tomorrow's my son's 30th birthday. My daughter's 32. She just had a baby last night. She's a therapist.
Congratulations on being a grandmother.
Yeah. So, you know, but we don't see, like, I'll see him tonight at the hospital. Right. But we get along just fine. You know, I think he was a little angry with me when I started to post a lot, but you know, you wrote a book and made a movie and I get to do my narrative.
Yeah, because he's, you know, you look at from like somebody's perspective of watching a movie, they've seen his videos and stuff like that. He comes across as charismatic, a great guy, all of these things there. And then you've got the ex-wife that's posting kind of the opposite there as well. You know, it might be quite a conflict for a lot of people there as well. But obviously, as a therapist, I can see the way somebody acts and behaves. They're likely to be that type of person there as well. How
Right.
did you deal with people going, he seems a great guy? Bearing in mind, they're probably just going from the movie and YouTube videos. How did you deal with that?
Nobody really says that because the way he depicts himself in the movie is a maniac.
Right.
You know,
Exactly.
like he's an absolute nut in the movie, you know? So nobody's really surprised that this all happened. because he
Yeah,
already put it out there. I
sure.
didn't take any, what I said is that, this is the way he sees it. And listen, it's Hollywood, so it really glamorizes it.
Yeah.
It was extremely traumatizing.
I was
So
going to say,
I wanted to let the world know about that
yeah,
because there's a lot of women that are in the same situation that I was
yeah.
in.
How did you feel when you
Our
sat
men
down?
too.
Yeah, of course. And I've had clients of both. I think I've probably had more male clients than female
Yeah,
clients in
yeah.
narcissistic relationship. How did you feel sitting down to watch the movie? What were you thinking?
That was crazy. So Paramount allowed me to have a private screening with my husband. And it was weird. I mean, I'm like, oh my God, like what's this gonna be like? But it was fine.
Right.
I was happy with it. They just depicted it. It was a very well-made movie. They depicted me as a young girl who fell in love, who was chasing this crazy guy around and trying to
Yeah.
protect her children. And that's really the truth. It was his movie, it was his narrative, it was about him.
Yeah.
A big piece of the movie, but really it's his
Of
story.
course. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, happy that you have Margot Robbie playing you.
Well, that's like a double-edged sword, right? It's not that much fun to have the most beautiful woman in the world who's 20 years younger than you. But no, it's a compliment and it was fine.
So, what made you decide to become a therapist then? Because when I spoke to a few people, that she's a therapist. Oh my God, really? They're assuming the people that don't know you,
Yeah.
friends of mine in the UK that don't know a lot about therapy or whatever, they assume that you're probably like a model somewhere or you're an actress or something like that, not a
Yeah,
therapist.
no. Like I said, my life really began with psychology, right? With
Yeah,
my
yeah,
and so I put myself into therapy and I believe therapy saved my life. So I was, 38, 39, and I didn't want to be in fashion anymore. And I just said, you know what? I'm going to go back to school and be a therapist. And so I had to finish like a year and a half of undergrad, got my master's, got my doctorate, and then I just became a therapist, and it was this is my work that I was meant to do. This is, for anybody who's listening, like I was a late bloomer.
yeah.
Uh, even though I had other somewhat successes before that, but this is my calling. This is why I'm meant to be on the earth. And I love it. And I just can't even believe I get to do it.
You can see that with all your videos, with everything that you do. You got obviously your book. You just can tell. You just can tell. That's so inspiring as a therapist to see a therapist that is. I mean, obviously, pretty much all the therapists have been through things and they're there for a reason. There, but you just seem on another level. So much energy for
Yes.
everything that you do.
You know what it is? It's that when I had my practice, all these bright, smart, beautiful women were coming into my practice, being coercively controlled, being abused, being betrayed, dealing with addiction. And I just thought, like, we have a problem. So that's why I went back and wrote my book, Run Like Hell, because I'm a true academic. I really wanted to understand, what is the trauma bond? Who is this pathological person? How can women escape and how do they heal? And so that's the way I wrote my book. It was a very hard thing to write a book. I don't understand. I talk to all these therapists that write 11, 12 books. I'm like, how do you do it?
Yeah,
I could barely write one. And then it just, became my passion. And I'm in a unique situation. I get to take the most misogynistic movie on the planet and help women everywhere.
yeah, yeah.
So I couldn't have written it better if I tried. And this wasn't some great plan of mine.
No,
The movie came out 2013. I didn't really start talking about it until 2020. So when it came out, I had nothing to say. But when I had a reason to talk about it, to
yeah.
educate and empower, it became a tool.
Because with like a lot of like celebrities or people that's known for one song or for one movie or something. I was gonna because it's one of the questions I was gonna ask you originally. Do you find you get frustrated that people want to talk to you about that? But it looks like you've used it and enhanced it.
I don't get frustrated about it because, I'm kind of grateful, honestly.
Yeah,
I'm grateful. I mean, I didn't like it when I first read the book. I wasn't too excited. I would spend a lot of therapy when the movie was coming out. But in the end, what happened was when the movie was coming out, I was like, oh my God, how am I going to deal with this? And then at one point I said, Nadine, you have to surrender. This is bigger than you. So I offer that to people because you never know where things are going to take you. Right.
no,
2013, when the movie came out, I had no idea I wanted this to be my specialty. Now, you would think it would have been obvious, but it just wasn't. So, no, I don't get sick and tired of talking about it because I will always have somebody reach out to me and say, hearing your story inspired me. hearing what you went through gave words to what I'm dealing with.
Yeah, it's relatable because it doesn't matter the glitz and the glamour. It's still a mum with small children in an abusive relationship, and that could be
Exactly.
anywhere. Yeah,
And how many women are and people are like that in the world? Millions.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point of the podcast, which is like so grateful to have you on it, because the idea is, and I spoke to some of my clients when getting ready to start the podcast, what would you like from a podcast? And they said that, a mental health podcast, and they all said the same, that they wanted a story of adversity that they could relate to, and then they want to hear how somebody changed their lives that they can then be inspired by. And yours is like literally a perfect example there as well. You know, it's a
That doesn't mean my life is perfect. I mean, we all have our challenges, health challenges. I've been
yeah.
with my husband 26 years now, so that's great. But we've had our challenges. But the thing is that what's been the constant for me is therapy and working on myself. You are the most important project you will ever work on.
Yeah. One of the things that I say, I don't know if you say it yourself to clients, when clients come to me and they're like, oh, I'm paying a lot of money for therapy, I say you're investing in yourself.
That's
And that
right.
seems to make a big difference when you just say investing.
Yeah, and when you think about it, how many hours a week do we spend doing so many other things? But we need to spend an hour every week or every 2 weeks working on ourselves and working
Yeah.
on our relationships. It's like
Yeah.
crazy to me that it's not, it should be mandatory, honestly. I always say there's two people in the world, those that are in therapy and those that should be.
Yeah, I say similar. People ask me, what should I do? I was like, for me, everyone should have a therapist. You should always be in therapy. Read books, therapy. That's my answer. That's my sort of throwaway answer to everything.
I'm not in therapy right now. It's like one of the first times, but I was in therapy straight for 25 years.
Same therapist, or did you change?
Different therapists,
Yeah,
different therapists, so from 23 to 54, even then that might even be 30 years. I don't know. I'm terrible at math, 33, 43. Yeah, 30 years and consistently. So different therapists, dream therapy, somatic therapy, because there's all different angles to learn about yourself, and now I started a community. And so because it's expensive to be in therapy, and I understand that. So I want to democratize what I do. So I started an online community called Sir Thriver, where it's a trauma bond recovery community. And I took my book and I made it into a course, an online course. But then I run support groups for women, and I bring in experts on trauma bonds and narcissism and coercive control every week. And so for $30 a month, which is like $1 a day, they get.
yeah, that's a lot. That's a great value for money there. Yeah,
And I have women from all over the world, Czechoslovakia. I don't know if I have any, but I think I have people from England, Australia, Italy, United States, a lot from Canada. And it's amazing because they all get to validate and support each other. So I have my private practice, I do podcasts, and now I'm doing that. And that's like taking on a life of its own.
I think you've probably found the same as me, that I've got clients all over the world and they've all got the same problems.
Yes, yes. We all have the same problems, as different as we are, as similar as we are. And what I like about the community is that, and this is why therapy works, you can't heal it. You can't build resilience in isolation.
No, no, you have to sometimes you can't do it on your own,
Yeah.
especially been in like a narcissistic relationship. You need help,
You
and
need help and you need
it
people
takes
that
time.
get it, right? So I ran my group last night, from 8 p.m. to 9. So I've been working a lot to do this. But I had 30 women in there last night, and it was so beautiful.
How do they feel coming out of it?
Obsessed with my work. What?
Do they come out feeling like inspired that there is hope
Yes.
for them? Yeah,
There's hope, and they feel validated. Nobody's like, "You're crazy. He didn't say that." Everybody's like, "Oh no, I believe that."
yeah, yeah. And I think that's really important, because I've had clients come to me and they're like a shell of a person, and I'm
Yes,
telling them logical explanations for it, and their brain is wired where it can't comprehend. And
that's
it's
right.
took months to get to them to go, I get what you're saying now.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. And so it's so yeah, so this has just become my world. I'm going to be 58 in December. And so I figure I'm just going to work really hard till 60. So I got 2 more years to really keep going, because I don't know if I could work at this pace forever. But
I was going to say, what's next for you? Because you don't sound like somebody that's going to stop.
I don't know what's next for me. Like I'm in Connecticut now. I go between Connecticut and Florida. Like I said, my daughter just had her second baby.
Yeah.
So I'm very also focused on my family, and I don't really know what's next, but I'm just going to keep going on this path of empowering, validating, and educating women everywhere because it's needed, it's necessary. And, domestic violence and coercive control, we used to think about it just as one physical incident, but there's so much psychological and mental abuse that's happening. And so I don't really know where it's going to take me, but I just hope my community grows. I don't think I'm going to write another book because that was really hard, but we'll see what emerges. I don't know.
Yeah, everything you're doing is great. Empowering women, and what you're doing is amazing. All of your links will be in the description there. Nadine, again, thank you so much. It's been an absolute privilege for coming on the podcast today. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's been a wonderful morning. Good way to start the day.
Good way to start the day where you are. Thank you so much.
Okay.